Is your practice tired of wrestling with insurance denials, deciphering EOBs, and watching your revenue slip through the cracks? You are not alone. Welcome to The Claim Game, the podcast designed to cut through the confusion and provide you with the best practices for revenue cycle management success. We are Jeremy and Catherine Zug, and we've been with people just like you in the trenches. Each week, we'll break down complex billing processes, share real-world solutions from practices like yours, and ask questions of the game makers and changers of healthcare so you can take control of your revenue. Let's turn those claim denials into deposits and help you return to focusing on patient care. It's time to win the claim game.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Claim Game. I'm Jeremy Zug, and as a reminder, in this season of The Claim Game, we are going through the revenue cycle management best practices, one territory at a time. And as a reminder, Catherine's not here because she is on maternity leave, so that's a good thing. Last episode, we had a very interesting discussion about prior authorizations and the nuances that go into that process. So if you want to check that one out, go back to the last episode, give that a listen. Remember, these are the key domains of billing, and mastering each of these domains is really critical to make sure that your revenue cycle management system is a revenue engine for your practice and is not a drain on what you're trying to do. Today, we're going to be grabbing a magnifying glass to zoom in on eligibility a little closer. If you missed the initial setup and you want to understand the full scope of the board from a really high level perspective and how the 6 domains of billing all work together and function, and be sure to check out episode 1 for the complete overview. All right, let's get started today. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever been playing a board game like Monopoly or Risk or Catan? And while you were playing those games, have you ever had a game where you thought you were just killing it, crushing the other side? Maybe you had hotels on Boardwalk or armies in Australia or a superior chess position. And then suddenly something happened. You drew a bad card, you missed a rule, you missed a move that should have been obvious, and the whole game just flips on you. You're definitely not winning anymore. You are losing, and you feel like you're disoriented and you don't know what's next. Well, that's kind of what happens with eligibility and benefits. So we're going to talk about the basics today, and we're going to talk about 2 hidden steps that trip up the best practices that make it feel like that, like the game just flips on you and you're left not knowing what move to take next. So our hope after the end of this 25 minutes today is that you won't just know what went wrong. You'll have a strategy to stop surprises in the eligibility and benefits process. You can protect your patient relationships, maintain their trust, and you can secure revenue for your bottom line. We've talked about completing an eligibility and benefit check 2 episodes, but why isn't a one-time benefit check really enough? Why is it so vital that we check and regularly update patient accumulations and communicate those changes? And those are the 2 things that we're going to be covering today, is updating accumulations and communicating with patients. And here's why these 2 areas are important. First, an eligibility and benefit check is just a snapshot in time. It's nothing other than what the benefits and eligibility were for that patient in that brief 15 minutes that you looked. And it can change. So you have to be able to get different pictures of what that looks like at different moments in time. 2, updating accumulations is essential to ensure the accuracy of the patient's benefit stage. Are they paying a deductible? Are they paying a copay or coinsurance? Do they have an out-of-pocket maximum? It's really important to understand where they are on the roadmap there. And finally, 3rd, clear communication with patients about changes prevents billing surprises. And if you can prevent billing surprises for your client, whether that's from the insurance company or from your practice, you retain their trust and you remove any patient aging, spike in receivables issues, and collection issues. So let's start with step 4. Step 3 is patient communication. Step 4 is updating accumulations. And we're going to start out of order. And I'll tell you why. You'll have to communicate with patients before step 4, but they're very closely related, and we're going to handle them a little out of order because you have to know what you're communicating to your patient before you communicate to your patient. So what exactly are accumulations, and why is tracking them a non-negotiable part of a healthy revenue cycle? Accumulations are when a client has a deductible and they pay for health services toward that deductible. So let's say, for example, I have a $5,000 deductible that I must meet before the insurance company kicks in. That means I have to pay $5,000 for covered healthcare services within my plan year before the insurance company pays anything and before I get to a copay or coinsurance. So if that makes sense, it's important to update accumulations so that you know when to not charge your client a full fee. Or it's also helpful to understand that your client, your patient, is going to have healthcare services beyond just your service, just beyond your specialty. So they're going to be racking up accumulations throughout the month, throughout the year. And if you miss it, you could be overcharging your client. So this could lead to a refund or additional collections. And that's a big pain. There might be some overlap there, but what you don't want to do is overcharge your patient by $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, undercharge your client by $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and then have to go get that money. Because the moment they leave your office, the chances that you collect that money is very unlikely. So the conclusion here is by regularly updating accumulations, you can have way more control over the accuracy of your patient collections. So the question is, all right, Jeremy, great. I understand accumulations. I know it's important. So how often should we be updating accumulations? And what is the best way to get this information? Okay, so frequency is the main point of this question, and it depends on a few things. One, it depends on the patient's plan, and it depends on your patient's visit frequency and cadence. If you have a service where, let's say they're coming in for some kind of testing, and you're going to see them one time for testing, you need to be very sure about the accumulations, and you need to be very sure about their benefit levels so that you can communicate precisely what they owe. If they're coming back multiple times to your office for multiple visits, you could check on a less frequent basis or a more frequent basis depending on the service that you provide. We recommend using patient portals, payer portals, to get this information. Those are, that's a wide range of tools that you can use, but the payers normally update their portals with the most accurate information. And then what do you do with this information, right? It's like, I have a client, I can find out their deductible and how their services apply and what they owe, but what do I do with it? So what you need to do is have a standard tool, and we have one that you can find in the Hourglass, but it's an eligibility and benefit check template, and it's critical to ensure you gather and track this information consistently and update it in your EHR, your electronic health record, your EMR, whatever you're using for each appointment, so that you or your clinicians or your operations people or your front office staff are on the same page every single time. Let's move on to step 3, which is communicating to your patients. How do we communicate all of this financial information to them clearly and effectively without overwhelming them or damaging your professional relationship? Well, that's a good question. This stuff is like a total mystery to most people. And so the way that you communicate to your patient is either trust building or trust degrading. So the first thing we would say, and that we've seen because we collect from patients every day and we have these conversations with patients every day, we believe that preventative communication is key. And this is why we wanted to cover step 4 first. If you know that for your service, your patient is going to owe an astronomical amount of money. Let's say it's, for anybody, this could be a different amount, but let's say it's $4,000 for some kind of test that they need to do. You do not want to surprise them with that on the day of the appointment. So you want to find out as early as possible what they're going to owe for your services, and you want to get in front of them really quickly. say, hey, we ran your benefits. You can check with your insurance, but this is what you're going to owe. You're going to owe $4,000 for this test. It's going to be expensive. Here are our options. Here's how we can navigate around this. That people appreciate way more than they're in the office, they're getting ready, they haven't had any communication from you, and boom, they get nailed with a bill. Don't do that, please. Second, you should be transparent about what they can expect to pay so there are no surprises at checkout. And this is the problem with eligibility and benefits. It's just a quote. You're just getting a quote from the insurance company. You're not getting a guarantee of anything in this process. So to give your patient a range of what they can expect to pay is really important. Hey, Bob, we have other patients with your plan as well. This is how this payer tends to process and pay. We don't want to guarantee anything in case there's some shenanigan, but this is the range that you can expect to pay. Next, a great way to do this is by sending a benefit summary via email, which clearly outlines their estimated financial responsibility before the appointment. And that's just a good service. That's you caring about the folks that you serve. And finally, you only need to do this when there's a change in the payment amount or if you see them very infrequently. So I wouldn't be sending that summary of benefits every time, especially if you're seeing them a lot. I would be sending that to somebody if you see them once a year or it's a big thing or it's out of the norm. But if they're going to see you every week, for example, which some providers do, I probably wouldn't inundate your client with all of that for sure. All right, this email, the benefit summary, should provide a breakdown of their deductible status, so the amount that they have to pay before insurance kicks in, copay and coinsurance, that's when insurance kicks in and your client has to pay an amount, and any limitations on their plan, right? And you just want to make a clear professional experience with your client. And this process, by the way, is not standard across the board in healthcare. Some healthcare organizations do it, some don't. It would be great if we could change the culture on that so that practices and healthcare organizations do a good job of distilling how insurance works for their clients. I think we would have a lot less upset patients. We would have a lot less debt. I think we'd have a lot less friction in the healthcare world if we really understood how this worked and did our patients and clients a favor by doing a lot of the heavy lifting for them.
One mistake in your notes can cost you a reimbursement. Blueprint helps providers avoid that by writing smarter documentation, flagging issues early, and getting claims out the door faster. Check the show notes for the link to give it a try for free.
And next, what are some of the consequences if a practice fails to communicate a patient's financial responsibility up front? First and foremost, the patient may be surprised by an unexpected bill, which can lead to dissatisfaction, strain on the relationship, decreased patient volume. And my general rule of thumb is you want to inform them ahead of the appointment. Hopefully one day ahead. If you have to do it while they're in your waiting room, that's fine. But again, you don't want any surprises, right? To be clear is to be kind to your folks. Two, this can cause patient balances to age, resulting in more time and energy spent on collections. So you don't want to spend a lot of time on collections, right? This is something we do day in and day out. It's hard to get a hold of people. Booking calls is tough. People have busy lives. They want to go about their thing and they don't really want to be burdened by a bill from your office, to be frank. And so what you don't want to do is you don't want those balances to age and you want to be efficient with your staff's time. And the other reason to communicate up front and what can happen if you don't is in a worst case scenario, it can cause the client to abandon care, leading to lost revenue and a poor reputation for the practice. And that is completely preventable, right? That's just process implemented in a practice leads to good outcomes. All right, Jeremy, that's all well and good, right? So what should a practice do if they haven't been updating patient accumulations and now they have a lot of open balances? So we're going to talk a little bit about patient aging and soft collections in the aging follow-up domain, but we have a couple of things that we want to note here. And the first is that you need a trained admin doing checkout. You need somebody who's known in the community and known from your patients who can, they walk in, they have a familiar face, and this person knows your processes, they know your patients, they know your providers, they know you. And you want somebody who can talk with a human being through their balances without fear. They treat it, this is just information, this is just data. but they don't adopt the potentially spicy emotions from your clients. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. We have some really great best practices on that, so stay tuned. I want to talk about a tool that I mentioned during this episode that I think will help you out tremendously. Actually, we've alluded to two of these tools, and I want to give you a quick rundown of our eligibility and benefit check template and the benefit summary email template and how they work together, what the dance looks like. So the eligibility and benefit check template is a form that you can use to complete the verification process. It ensures that you collect all the necessary information for a clean claim. We've reviewed that in a previous episode, but I'll bring that up again here because it's just good to know. And then we also talked about the benefit summary email template. This is designed for clear communication. The language is established. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. These templates provide a standardized way to inform patients of their estimated financial responsibility, and they set clear expectations and they build trust. These tools are designed to work together. So you have a template, you get the information, you then take that information and you put it into a patient communication so that you can move ahead very effectively with the service that you're trying to provide. All right, now it's time to talk about a case study. We have no shortage of case study cards around eligibility and benefits and what happens when this goes wrong. And the one that I want to bring up today is from a big agency in Pennsylvania that we worked with. And this agency had switched electronic medical record systems. That's always a pain. There's always stuff that goes wrong there. But part of the problem was they didn't know where to put eligibility and benefit information. And so because of the volume that they were doing, essentially information was flooding into the EMR and not being captured and communicated very effectively. And that caused a spike in aging, that caused denials, that caused patient dissatisfaction, it caused clinician dissatisfaction. And so what we were brought in to do was build out SOPs, implement benefit check templates, implement benefit summary emails, train the team on how to talk to patients. And eventually aging went down, denials went down, patients and clinicians were happier. When we inject process and clear communications and repeatable tools into a business, even in healthcare, you can get the same outcomes, better outcomes, higher outcomes. You can improve your volume and staff retention, all kinds of stuff. It's not a magic bullet for everything. And I know I sound like that guy, the myth guy that he has a hammer and everything he sees is a nail or whatever that story is. And I know we can start to sound like that a little bit, but we believe that healthcare practices are so fragmented in how they operate that we need to hammer away at these nails to really get you a lot of value. All right, in conclusion, we talked about stages 3 and 4 of eligibility and benefits, updating accumulations and communicating with patients. We discussed a few tools today. You can find those in the Hourglass that's on our website, practicesol.com. And if you think these would be helpful for your practice, check out the link in the show notes below. Next time, we're going to be talking about eligibility and benefit KPIs. So you won't want to miss that. We can't wait to see you here next time. Thank you so much for joining us. And we hope you go out there and win the claim game. If you enjoyed today's episode of The Claim Game, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really helps new listeners to find us. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to The Claim Game on your favorite podcast app. Your feedback means so much to us. We want to provide valuable education about revenue cycle management. So if there's something we didn't cover in our topic that was a burning question for you, please let us know so we can try to get you the information you desire. You can find the links to all resources we mentioned in this episode in the show notes. And if you want to dive deeper into our resources, we have 2 places you can do that. First, you can go to our blog at practicesol.com/blog, where we have 8 years of educational blogs. If you want to learn more about what Practice Solutions does, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Just go to practicesol.com to learn more and to connect with one of our awesome people on our team. Thanks for listening. We are Jeremy and Catherine Zug, and this is The Claim Game. See you at the game table next time.